Hello, this is Tonelli. Welcome back to One Chord a Week. Today's chord is a bit strange, but now that we're reaching the end of this series, I'm probably just a few videos away from finishing up. And you've noticed that we run into many chords where extensions, the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th, but especially the 11th, has been kind of an issue. We had to figure out if we could use it, and if we couldn't use it, how we could manage to fit it in certain chords. And today's chord is one of those that will really help us, even though maybe with the sound, you won't be using it too much. It does give you insight into how we manage different notes and different chords and different tonalities. And plus, it also gives you the sound of one of my favorite scales. So we'll check that out at the end of the video. But let's begin. The dominant 7th sharp 11th, sometimes simply called 7th sharp 11th, is of course based on a dominant 7th chord, which if you haven't watched, you should watch the video on these chords because they're extremely important. And that sharp 11 gives it a strange sound. Again, we have kind of looked at a sharp 11 before in the major 7 sharp 11th. Here's another link for you. And the major 7 sharp 11 is one of my favorite chords. Now with the dominant version of it, it becomes a bit more strong and maybe just a bit too much for certain uses. But you will find it in certain standards. So if you have a real book, maybe of jazz standards, you'll find it sometimes. You'll find it on horns arrangements. You'll find it sometimes even in scores, for movies, because when you have certain scenes, this chord could be appropriate. But as far as rock music goes, or modern music, or fusion, you will be able to use it even if you only suggest it. And sometimes we talked about this through this series. Sometimes a chord is a bit too much for your composition. Sometimes it's a bit too much for your instrumentation. So if you're using distortion, big chords with a lot of tensions will be problematic. But if you know the chords exist, then you can still take advantage of their sound by maybe layering it. So I could have a major triad on my rhythm guitar, and then I can focus on the 7th and the sharp 11th myself with a melody or a solo, and I will give you that sound. So certainly a chord you should learn. And by the way, it's actually fun to play, and it's a very unusual sound. So it's always good to have those in your toolbox. So let's see how we build it. The easiest way to look at a 7 sharp 11th chord is probably to start from a regular dominant 7th chord and then just add the augmented 4th on top of it. Augmented 4th is the same as a sharp 11th. So let's begin with, of course, the root C. And then we move on to the major 3rd E, the perfect 5th G, and the minor 7th B flat. We've seen it many times, of course, because we've looked at many dominant chords. But then on top of this, we go look for that strange sharp 11th, which is an F sharp, which we associate usually with major, with Lydian. Is not very often associated with the dominant sound. So it does sound kind of weird. But you'll see that it creates a wonderful scale that I can't wait to teach you. So let's continue with the sound section, and then we'll move on to scales. And this is the sound of the 7 sharp 11th. It's kind of mysterious and bright. At the same time, it's kind of obscure and a bit menacing maybe, but it's not a bad chord. And there's one use I like to make of it. And when we get to very complex chords, sometimes the rules are kind of blurry because you can look at them many different ways. And you can, you'll find an example in a song that does one thing and then an example in another one that does another. So this chord is not as easy to give you a cut and dry application as maybe just a regular dominant chord. But here's what I like to do with it. As you know, some dominant chords, they're called the tritone substitutions, but basically what they do is they resolve downward by a half step. So if you are in C major, you might have D flat 7 to C. Okay, so if you know a bit of theory, you'll have encountered this. If you're new to this, it's still good to know. You don't have to know why right now. Of course, it's not what we're doing in this series of videos, but still, now you know that you can use a dominant 7th chord one half step above its resolution. And this is how I like to use this chord. I enjoy the sound it makes when you go from the 7 sharp 11 to the major chord one half step before it. So I basically use it as a tritone substitution. And you can also use it, of course, resolving as a regular dominant chord, 5-1. So if you had a G, 7 sharp 11, you will resolve it to the 1. But I enjoy more the downward half step resolution. And that's pretty much it for the sound. It sounds strange, but this chord is very specific. One thing you should keep in mind is that the sharp 11, the raised fourth, is usually associated with the Lydian sound, which is, of course, a very major sound. It's not dominant. And we looked at the major 7th sharp 11th chord, and this is not a dominant sound. But when you use it, the sharp 11, over a dominant chord, you get this strange thing where the sharp 11 wants to go somewhere, the 7th wants to go somewhere else, and you should certainly explore it. But the good thing about this chord is that it gives rise to a beautiful scale that I will share with you right now. I almost forgot, before we move on to the scales, we have to learn 3 fingerings on the fretboard so that then you can use those scales over the chord. So let me show you 3 very quick positions that you can start with right now. The first one is the following, based on this 7th chord. We'll have the root on the 5th string, 3rd fret, and then we go right into the raised 11th or the sharp 11th on the 4th fret of the 4th string. That's the F sharp. Then we have on the same 3rd fret as before, on the 3rd string, we have the B flat, which is our minor 7th. Then we play the E, the major 3rd, on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And then again, with the same first finger, we play the G, which is the 5th on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. And this is a position that uses all the notes, but usually with this chord, the only note you can really drop is the 5th, because everything else is kind of part of the chord. The 3rd and the minor 7th are part of the dominant sound, and of course the sharp 11, if you remove it, then is not a 7 sharp 11th chord anymore. Okay, so this one actually uses all the notes. When we move up to the 8th fret of the 6th string, another usual position for us, we have this chord. We have the root on the 6th string, 8th fret, and then again we go straight to the sharp 11th, the F sharp here on the 9th fret of the 5th. And then with this bar here, with the first finger, we play again the 8th fret on the 4th string. That's the B flat. That's our minor 7th, which makes it dominant, together with the 9th fret again on the 3rd string, which is E, which makes it again dominant, together with the flat 7. And then following with the bar, we have on the 8th fret of the 2nd string a G, which is the 5th, and the root again, which is C on the 1st string. And it sounds like this. If you don't want to play this C way up there, you can remove it, because after all, you've already played it at the bottom on the bass string. So whatever you want to do works. And finally, we move up to the 10th fret of the 5th string. We're going to play it in inversion. We're going to put the 5th G at the bottom. So on the 10th fret of the 5th string, we have G. On the same fret of the 4th string, with a little bar, we have the root C. Then we move up to the 11th fret, and we play the 11th, the sharp 11th F sharp, and the 7th B flat. So we have this. And then we still need to play an E, because we have to make it a dominant 7th chord. So this finger will take care of that on the 12th fret of the 1st string. And it goes like this. And there you have it, 3 positions. You can get started right away with this strange, beautiful chord, and then you'll know it. And that's the point of these videos after all. Now let's move on to scales. The scale I'm talking about is called the Lydian Dominant scale, or Lydian flat 7 scale. And it's a mode of the melodic minor scale, again, well beyond the scope of these series of videos, but still, you can check it out. It's called the Lydian Dominant. And what it is a Lydian scale with a flat 7. Whereas usually the Lydian scale would have a major 7, this one has a minor 7. And the reason that's important is that it gives us the major triad, it gives us the sharp 4 of the Lydian, but also it gives us the minor seventh of the dominant chord. So this scale fits perfectly over this chord. And so here's what it would sound like. You have this sound of the chord and the sound of the scale. It sounds great. And one way I like to use this scale is to not maybe have such a specific chord underneath. So maybe I will just play it over a regular dominant seventh chord, or maybe even just over a fifth chord, a power chord. By the way, here's one of the first videos of this series, the power chord. Or maybe I would use it over a simple major triad. You see what I mean? So it's a sound that you can certainly get used to, and it's a beautiful sound. And there's no better way of getting used to the sound of a scale as finding the chord that exemplifies that scale. And so that's why I really wanted to teach you this chord, the 7 sharp 11, because it's basically the sound of this scale. But when you play it all together, it does sound a bit dissonant, but still you get access to this great sound. Another way we can look at a scale is, of course, by what's missing. And so this chord is very specific, but still we can kind of trick it and find another scale, which is the major pentatonic scale. The reason is that the major pentatonic scale is based on a major scale, and we lose the fourth and the seventh note. And thankfully, the fourth and seventh notes are exactly the F sharp and the flat 7 B flat, which don't fit the major scale. So by removing these two notes, because the major pentatonic is root, second, third, fifth and sixth, there is no fourth and there is no seventh. And so we can kind of stick it on top of this chord. And it will work. And what happens here is that you have a very bland scale, which is the major pentatonic. There's not much going on in the major pentatonic. You know, we don't have any half steps. It's kind of mellow. And at the same time, you have these tensions on the chord. And so if that's what you're looking for, you know, a very simple melody, a very laid-back melody, but still a lot of harmonic content, then this might be an option. So use this very rich chord with the fourth and the seventh, and then use an easier scale like the major pentatonic. So both of them will work. And there are not many more that you can use over this chord. It's very specific. And this is it for the dominant 7 sharp 11th chord. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, like, comment. It's very important for the channel and that we can reach more people and maybe help them out as they progress through their studies and their chord studies. If you need extra help with this, don't forget that I do offer private online lessons. So there's a link down here to an email. Just get in touch and we'll talk details. And that's it. So I'll see you next week with a new chord. Make sure you download the free PDF for 21 licks. It's 100% free, no email, no registration. It's just my small gift to you for continuing to study and to improve yourself as a guitar player. All right, I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.